Following the Battle of Antietam, Union Major General Edwin Sumner stated, "I regret to report that the loss in my corps was very heavy, which is to be accounted for by the long and furious contest that my divisions had to maintain in the center against the determined efforts of the enemy." September 1862. Robert E. Lee has drawn the Union Army away from Richmond in Virginia and into the Appalachian Mountains in Maryland. We will zoom into the South Mountain region of Maryland. Lee has divided the Confederate Army in two, with large portions of Longstreet's corps in Hagerstown, Maryland, and much of Jackson's corps striking the exposed Union Armory in Harper's Ferry in western Virginia. Meanwhile, General McClellan pursues Lee northwest into the mountains. The giant Army of the Potomac follows from Frederick, Maryland toward Boonesboro, shown here. However, at the gaps through South Mountain near Boonesboro, a single division from Jackson's corps under D.H. Hill desperately holds the mountain pass long enough for Lee to begin reorganizing his divided army at Sharpsburg, Maryland. It's important to include the first initials for Daniel Harvey Hill to distinguish this division from A.P. Hill's division, which is also in Lee's army, but at Harper's Ferry at this time. This battle at South Mountain on September 14 will be just the first time that D.H. Hill's division will be tasked with defending a line against a vastly larger force in September 1862. Longstreet brings his corps down from Hagerstown toward Boonesboro and up the slopes of the mountain. However, McClellan's army is too large. D.H. Hill's division and Longstreet's corps pull back to Sharpsburg on the night of September 14th. It's morning, September 15th. Let's zoom in to Sharpsburg, Maryland. Lee decides to make a stand at Sharpsburg, noting the hills looming over Antietam Creek, the creek shown in blue here. Longstreet's corps assembles along stretches near Sharpsburg. D.H. Hill takes positions here on September 15, that division still licking its wounds from the Battle of South Mountain. A sunken road is situated near D.H. Hill's position, highlighted in yellow, that country lane forming a ready prepared entrenchment. D.H. Hill's division, which after South Mountain has diminished to about 3,000 men. Meanwhile, McClellan is approaching from South Mountain towards Sharpsburg, taking positions on the east side of Antietam Creek. Evening comes. The sun rises on September 16. Jackson's corps, fresh from capturing the Union garrison at Harper's Ferry, has largely arrived now, forming positions above D.H. Hill. More Union corps arrive on the other side of the creek. McClellan sends Hooker's division over the creek first, crossing an undefended upper bridge late in the afternoon. Evening falls. Mansfield crosses the upper bridge. Bright the next morning, September 17, Hooker's corps attacks the Confederate left. D.H. Hill's men in the Sunken Road will be called into action early on. Let's zoom in to the Sunken Road. The Sunken Road is shown here. At the onset of the battle at daybreak, D.H. Hill's brigades are aligned as follows. Ripley is set north of the Sunken Road, above the Dunkard Church, the church shown here with a white cross. The Muma farmhouse is in Ripley's front here. Colquitt is formed on the left portion of the Sunken Road, then McRae, which you may see on some maps as Garland's brigade, but Garland was killed at South Mountain, and McRae is now heading the brigade. Roads on the right angle, and G.B. Anderson is at the intersection of the Country Lane and the Boonesboro Road, holding that avenue that leads down to the middle bridge over Antietam Creek. Just as with D.H. Hill and A.P. Hill, it is critical to include the first initials with the name Anderson, so G.B. Anderson here is not to be confused with R.H. Anderson, who we will also see in the Sunken Road shortly. Directly across the creek from the Sunken Road is Sumner's corps, consisting of 3 divisions. Richardson, Sedgwick, and French. During the morning attack on the Confederate left, Ripley comes under fire from Union cannon. By 8 o'clock a.m., Hooker's attack has driven through the cornfield and woods to the north. Mansfield's corps is approaching through the east woods. D.H. Hill's division near the Sunken Road is called to support the rebel left. Ripley mobilizes to the cornfield. The Muma barn in front of Ripley is set on fire to prevent its use by Union soldiers. Colquitt and McRae follow Ripley, advancing out of the Sunken Road toward the burning barn. Colquitt advances into the cornfield behind Ripley. Ripley is driven from the cornfield, then Colquitt enters the cornfield. McRae forms on Colquitt's right, advancing toward the east woods. The cornfield erupts again, the blue lines thundering through the cornfield and east woods. Nearly all of Colquitt's field officers are killed or wounded fighting in the woods in the cornfield. Colquitt and McRae are driven from the field. Colquitt and McRae will gather up their men to re-enter the fight later on. But 3 of D.H. Hill's brigades are now largely out of commission, leaving just Rhodes and G.B. Anderson to man the Sunken Road. D.H. Hill's weary line will form here. Rhodes has begun to move in the direction of the cornfield, but he turned back to the Sunken Road before engaging. G.B. Anderson's North Carolinians had also shifted up the Sunken Road from the right, joining his line to the right of Rhodes. To the left of Rhodes, Colquitt reforms as many of his men as he can in the Sunken Road at its junction with the Hagerstown Pike. Let's zoom in closer to the Sunken Road. Rhodes forms his Alabamians to the left of the bend in the Sunken Road. From left to right, these regiments are the 26th Alabama, 12th Alabama, 3rd Alabama, 5th Alabama, and 6th Alabama. The remnants of Colquitt and McRae are to the left of Rhodes. G.B. Anderson's brigade is to the right of Rhodes. G.B. Anderson's regiments from left to right are the 2nd North Carolina, then the 14th North Carolina, the 4th North Carolina, and finally the 30th North Carolina on the right. We will refer to Rhodes and Colquitt's section of the road as the western section and G.B. Anderson's section of the road as the eastern section. The defenders improve their defensive position by laying rail timbers on their front. But D.H. Hill will be without artillery support. D.H. Hill does have cannons at his command, but the Union artillery on the other side of Antietam Creek has demonstrated that any rebel cannon will be swiftly met with disastrous counterfire. The cannons are retired. Let's zoom back out. It's just after 9 a.m. McClellan has activated a 3rd Corps, this one under Sumner, to press the advance to the Dunker Church. Sumner's corps crosses the Antietam Creek at a ford constructed by engineers. The Corps has 3 divisions, and the order that they will advance is Sedgwick first, followed by French, and finally Richardson. Sedgwick's divisions rush forward onto the battlefield, only to be mangled in the west woods by rebel reinforcements under McLaws that have just arrived. McLaws throws Sedgwick out of the west woods. More Confederate reinforcements are arriving. Another division has arrived from Harper's Ferry under R.H. Anderson, not to be confused with G.B. Anderson, who is already in the Sunken Road. Lee sends R.H. Anderson to reinforce D.H. Hill in the Sunken Road. On the Union side, Sumner's corps has lost a division under Sedgwick, but Sumner still has 2 divisions on the field, French and Richardson. These 2 divisions have actually strayed off course from the original objective of following Sedgwick toward the Dunker Church, and they are now pivoted to strike D.H. Hill in the Sunken Road. The fight now shifts from the Confederate left around the cornfield to D.H. Hill's position on the Sunken Road. French and Richardson's divisions approach the Roulette farmhouse shown here. The Roulette farmhouse is 500 yards from the bend at the Sunken Road. D.H. Hill's weary brigades prepare for the attack in the Sunken Road. D.H. Hill had made the desperate stand at South Mountain just a few days previously against a vastly larger force. Now his men will make another stand against another large force in the Sunken Road. R.H. Anderson's division is on the way, but for now, D.H. Hill is alone. Let's zoom back into the Sunken Road area and take a look at the topography. Colquitt and Rhodes cover a 500-yard lane from the Hagerstown Pike to the bend in the Sunken Road. And then G.B. Anderson covers 450 yards from that bend to the next elbow in the road. Behind G.B. Anderson is a cornfield in 1862, not to be confused with the infamous cornfield on the rebel left. Cornfields are significant at Antietam because the battle took place in September, when the corn is as tall as a person. There was also an orchard here in 1862. Another cornfield is just west of the Roulette farmhouse here. Switching to a LiDAR map, we can see the contours of the Sunken Road highlighted here. Notice that the land slopes downhill behind the Sunken Road. To the right bend of the Sunken Road, where G.B. Anderson's men are stationed, there are two knolls that rise over 480 feet. G.B. Anderson's portion of the road is largely at or above 470 feet on its right flank, similar to the height of these knolls or small hills. However, the high ground of the western knoll crosses the Sunken Road here, the center point in G.B. Anderson's line. Here, the height of the Sunken Road is 475 feet, but it drops off precipitously from this point down the road toward the bend, bottoming off at about 450 feet before the bend. The position on the hill at its junction with the road thus has a clear advantage. This angle will prove critical in the action to come. French's division approaches the Roulette farmhouse with 3 brigades. Rebel skirmishers are posted along the farmhouse property. French advances Weber's brigade on the Roulette farmhouse, driving out rebel pickets. The other 2 brigades in French's division appear in line behind Weber. Weber's brigade has 3 regiments. The 4th New York is on the left, the 5th Maryland is in the center, and the 1st Delaware is on the right. The brigade behind them is under Morris, also with 3 regiments. The 108th New York is on the left, the 130th Pennsylvania is in the center, and the 14th Connecticut is on the right. Kimball's brigade follows with 4 regiments. The 7th West Virginia is on the left, followed by the 132nd Pennsylvania, the 8th Ohio, and the 14th Indiana on the right. An interesting note about the 7th West Virginia is that in 1862, West Virginia is not formally established. So sometimes these West Virginians are listed as Virginia. So we technically have Virginians at the Battle of Antietam that are on the side of the Union Army. The first blue line, Weber's brigade, crests the hill. The defenders are 2 rows deep in the Sunken Road. The rebels also have additional lines behind the Sunken Road. Due to the rising slope northward, the second line can fire over the Sunken Road at the blue attackers above. Because of the rising ground leading to the Sunken Road, the 2 sides will only see each other at a very close range. Weber is less than 100 yards from the Sunken Road. The defenders fire. Weber's lines take casualties fast and heavy. For many of Weber's men, this is their first engagement. The 1st Delaware on the right gets hammered, with 230 men killed or wounded, the most casualties of any Union regiment to approach the Sunken Road. Many of these casualties come from friendly fire. During the confusion, the green troops of this outfit throw a terrible volley into the backs of the forward line. The blue line wavers, falls back, rallies, advances, fires, falls back, rallies, fires. Weber himself is wounded. The 5th Maryland pulls back, retreating past Morris's line. Meanwhile, word has arrived that Sedgwick's division has been mangled in the West Woods. Sumner presses his other divisions forward. The attack on the Sunken Road is now pushed into acceleration. Let's zoom back in. Weber's brigade is pulling back toward the Roulette House, and Morris advances towards the front. Kimball is rushed forward to support Morris's left flank. Kimball's brigade is more experienced than the other brigades in French's division. Kimball's men will attempt to hold the position until Richardson's division arrives. Morris's line begins to waver. Longstreet urges D.H. Hill to go on the offensive. Rhodes complies. As the Gray Lines advance out of their positions, they soon realize more Union forces are on the way. An attack will not succeed. They scamper back to the Sunken Road. Morris and Weber have been thrown back, and Kimball remains. Kimball's men are desperately holding the hill overlooking the Sunken Road, but relief is on the way. French's division suffers over 1,700 casualties in the initial attack on the Sunken Road, with Kimball, Morris, and Weber's brigades each suffering over 500 casualties. Kimball's brigade, which will maintain its regiments in formation for 3 hours at the Sunken Road, has the most casualties at 639. It is almost 10 a.m. Let's zoom out. Above the Sunken Road, Mansfield's corps has made a slow but costly advance toward the Dunkard Church by the White Cross. At the Sunken Road, Kimball's brigade holds the high ground while D.H. Hill's men hold the Sunken Road, Cornfield, and Orchard. But both sides will receive a division of reinforcements. Richardson's division with 3 brigades, Marr, Caldwell, and Brooke, is approaching from the Roulette Farm to the north, and R.H. Anderson is approaching from Sharpsburg with brigades under Pryor, Cumming, Wright, and Featherston. A reminder here to not confuse R.H. Anderson's division, which has just arrived, with G.B. Anderson's brigade, which has been holding the Sunken Road this morning. Cobb's brigade from McClellan's division also adds men to the Confederate left. We will zoom closer to the Sunken Road to see the arrival of reinforcements. R.H. Anderson's brigades form up in the orchard behind the Sunken Road. Wright moves to the right flank with Cumming forming behind him. Pryor moves in on G.B. Anderson's flank near the angle, and Featherston's brigade follows G.B. Anderson's center. Meanwhile, Richardson's 3 brigades form up into battle lines behind the Roulette farmhouse. While French's division has struck the Sunken Road head-on at the bend, Richardson's division will move to the left of Kimball's position, with Marr's Irish brigade on the right and Caldwell's brigade on the left. Brooks' brigade will remain in reserve for the moment. The Irish brigade forms up the right flank of Richardson's advance. Maher's regiments from his right to left are the 69th New York under James Kelly, the 29th Massachusetts under Barnes, the 63rd New York under Burke, and the 88th New York under Patrick Kelly. Caldwell's brigade forms to the left of the Irish brigade. On Caldwell's right is the 64th New York and the 61st New York, both under Barlow, followed by the 7th New York under Brestol, the 81st Pennsylvania under McKean, and then the 5th New Hampshire under Cross. Richardson's division advances. We will zoom closer to the front. R.H. Anderson's brigades are taking position in the Sunken Road and in the cornfield behind the road. Kimball's left flank is now endangered. The defenders attack. The 7th West Virginia and the 132nd Pennsylvania push back the attack. This is a very unique moment, as the 7th West Virginia is still technically composed of Virginians in 1862, and in Kimball's report they are called the 7th Virginia. So a regiment of Virginians held the Union flank at the Sunken Road. Pennsylvania and Virginia secure the flank. Another strike comes on Kimball's center. Kimball's center holds. Let's take a wider view. It's about 10:30 a.m. Richardson's division advances to the front. Kimball's left is relieved and extended by Maher, who can counter the whole eastern section of the Sunken Road. Caldwell's brigade begins to wheel toward the Sunken Road. While Kimball's left is now relieved, his two regiments on the right, the 8th Ohio and the 14th Indiana, remain in action. Maher's Irishmen throw 5 or 6 volleys at the Sunken Road, and then they charge. Maher said, "It was my design, under the general orders I received, to push the enemy on both their fronts as they displayed themselves to us, and, relying on the impetuosity and recklessness of Irish soldiers in a charge, felt confident that before such a charge the rebel column would give way and be dispersed. But the rebels fire back from their entrenchments. The charge stalls. Yet the Irishmen hold their line just 30 paces from the Sunken Road. The fighting is sustained. The Irishmen remain engaged until they are very low on ammunition. Maher's horse is shot out from under him. The 69th New York on the right suffers 196 casualties, and the 63rd New York in the center suffers 202 casualties, the most casualties in Maher's brigade. The Irishmen sustained 540 casualties, the most among Richardson's brigades. Let's step back. Caldwell is sent in from the right to relieve Maher. Caldwell wheels forth, forming up behind Maher. Just as Maher had relieved Kimball, so Caldwell relieves Maher. Barlow's 64th New York and 61st New York relieve Maher's men on the eastern knoll overlooking the Sunken Road. Caldwell's other regiments move to relieve Maher. Now the Confederate right is in danger. We will zoom back in as Caldwell falls in line behind Maher. Caldwell is replacing Maher's heavily worn regiments. Barlow's New Yorkers are actually positioned well, situated on the bluff overlooking the Confederate right. At about 30 yards distance, Caldwell's men throw a terrible volley into the Sunken Road. G.B. Anderson and the supporting brigades from R.H. Anderson are now taking terrible fire from Caldwell's men on the high ground. Anderson's regiments on the right begin to peel off and pull back through the cornfield. The rebels take terrible losses in their retreat through the cornfield. Then Colonel Barlow of the 61st New York and 64th New York, maintaining the line on Caldwell's right flank, advance forward to the high point overlooking the Sunken Road, and these two regiments change front to improve their firing angle. Meanwhile, Caldwell's other regiments pursue the retreating rebels into the cornfield. We will zoom into the portion of the Sunken Road that Barlow's two New York regiments are approaching. The Sunken Road is shown here in yellow. This portion of the Sunken Road, as it approaches the bend, is deeper. A small hill is shown here, and the ground slopes down toward the bend. The hill in front of the Sunken Road rises to about 485 feet. The road directly facing the hill rises to about 475 feet. The height then falls as the road leads in the direction of the bend, falling to 450 feet. The defenders have already been driven out of the higher portion of the Sunken Road, but they remain in the lower portion. Barlow's New York regiments approach the hill, moving to the right of the rest of the brigade. Their left is clear as the rebels have already abandoned the road there. Because of the downhill slope, their vantage point provides an avenue of enfilade fire directly into the Sunken Road. Rifle rounds rake through the Sunken Road. The Sunken Road, which for 2 hours had been a secure entrenchment, now becomes a trap to the defenders. It is now a bloody lane. The 14th North Carolina under Bennett takes the worst casualties in G.B. Anderson's brigade with 139 killed or wounded. Barlow reported, "Our position giving us peculiar advantages for attacking in flank this part of the enemy's line, my regiments advanced and obtained an enfilading fire upon the enemy in the aforesaid road. Seeing the uselessness of further resistance, the enemy, in accordance with our demands, threw down their arms, came in large numbers, and surrendered. Thus, after deadly volleys are thrown into the Sunken Road, Barlow calls out, "Cease firing." The New Yorkers give an opportunity for the defenders to surrender, and some 300 Confederates surrender. We will zoom back to the larger front. While Barlow's New Yorkers cleared out a large section of the Sunken Road, Caldwell's other regiments have pursued the retreating rebels into the Cornfield. Turning to the western section of the road, a critical miscommunication happens about this time within Rhodes' brigade. Lieutenant Colonel Lightfoot of the 6th Alabama, just west of the bend on the road, reports to Rhodes that his right flank is taking terrible enfilade fire. Rhodes tells Lightfoot to turn his right flank and hold the road. However, Lightfoot misunderstands the order. Instead of swinging his right flank to refuse the line, he orders 6th Alabama about face, forward march. Major Hobson of the 5th Alabama, just to Lightfoot's left, asked Lightfoot if this order was for the whole brigade. Lightfoot said yes. Then all of Rhodes and Colquitt's men pull out. Only some 40 men from the brigade remain in position. Rhodes does not immediately see his brigade withdraw. Rhodes was attending an aide that was wounded, and then Rhodes himself was struck. However, Rhodes realizes his line is quickly disappearing. He pulls his few dozen remaining men together along with some 150 Mississippians and North Carolinians on a ridge near the Hagerstown Pike, just north of Sharpsburg. If we take a step back, we can see that the fall of the Sunken Road cannot just be blamed on Lightfoot's misunderstanding. Rhodes' position by this time was not tenable. Caldwell's brigade had broken through the eastern sector of the road, and the western Sunken Road was now in danger of being enfiladed. It is telling that Rhodes did not see the retrograde action of his brigade until it was too late, because he himself was attending a wounded aide, and then he himself was wounded. So it's likely that the position was by this time, near noon, no longer possible for the Confederates to hold, with or without a miscommunication. But D.H. Hill is not through. He has rallied his men from the broken regiments and sends these reassembled units, some 200 men, back in to hit the advancing blue lines. But Barlow gives the command, right shoulder, shift arms, and Barlow's New York regiments advance 300 yards over the Sunken Road to another hill in the Cornfield. The 61st New York and the 64th New York pushed the Confederates back again. However, the boldness of the counterattack convinces the Union lines that the rebels may have more men yet in the center. Another rebel counterattack threatens the rear of the Yankee advance. The 27th North Carolina and the 3rd Arkansas appear in the Cornfield behind the Union advance near the Roulette House. But Kimball's men, now approaching 3 hours of fighting, are still ready. Kimball bends the 8th Ohio and the 14th Indiana back, changing front to face the rebel attack. Another Union regiment, the 53rd Pennsylvania, is sent by Brooke to hit from the other side. Brooke's reserves are now engaged. The rear attack falters and the Confederates retreat. Because of Barlow's shift to protect the flank, Caldwell's regiments are split, with the 61st and 64th New York having cleared the western portion of the Sunken Road, while the center and left regiments, the 7th New York, the 81st Pennsylvania, and the 5th New Hampshire, advanced forward into the Cornfield following the rebel retreat from the eastern sector. Brooke sends the 57th New York and the 66th New York to plug the gap in Caldwell's line. Caldwell's left advances deeper into the Cornfield, but the Confederates counterstrike. Colonel Cross of the 5th New Hampshire detects a threat to the Union left. The 4th North Carolina of G.B. Anderson's brigade moves on Cross's flank. New Hampshire repels the attack, but North Carolina rallies, moving further along the flank. Cross shifts his line, but New Hampshire now has support. McKean's 81st Pennsylvania has now also turned to face the flanking threat, forming to the right of the 5th New Hampshire. The 4th North Carolina is beaten back. The rebels reform and hit the flank again. The 5th New Hampshire and 81st Pennsylvania hold the line, pushing the attack off again. The 5th New Hampshire takes the most casualties of all the regiments in Caldwell's brigade on this day. It's about 12:15 p.m. Barlow's New Yorkers hold the western edge of the Cornfield. Brooks' regiments, the 66th New York and the 57th New York, advance to relieve Caldwell's hard-pressed left flank. Brooks' 52nd New York also files in to relieve Barlow. But the situation is anything but settled in the Cornfield. Longstreet may not have any more men, but he does have enough cannon to contain the Union advance. Brooks' New York regiments hold the Cornfield under terrible cannon fire coming from the orchard. Barlow is wounded at this time while deploying in the Cornfield. There are 2 rebel batteries holding back the Union advance. One battery is in the orchard here, and another one is just west of the orchard here. Richardson orders Caldwell and Brooke to pull back out of the Cornfield to the ridge overlooking the Sunken Road. General Richardson is wounded by cannon fire, and General Winfield Scott Hancock is put in command of the division. It is 1 o'clock. The struggle for the Sunken Road comes to a rest. In the effort to secure the Sunken Road, French's division, the first wave, had suffered 1,700 casualties, and Richardson's division, the second wave, had taken nearly 1,200 casualties. In all, Sumner's corps secured the Sunken Road after suffering 3,000 casualties in about 4 hours. Like much that happened at Antietam, terrible bloodshed resulted in very little ground secured.